fuel used, trusted and recommended by Scuderia Ferrari HP.
More to protect their inner workings. Yeah, and then you've got this whole the story and has done an excellent job of plans to give.
This is Sky News. Welcome back. It's time now for a look at today's papers in the press preview with Anna Botting. Look at today's papers in the press preview with Anna Botting.
Well, hello there, you're watching the press preview, a first look at what is on the front pages. Time then to see what's making the headlines with the political commentator Tim Montgomery and the journalist and author Rachel Shelby. Welcome and lovely to see both of you. So let's take a look at the front pages then, shall we? Starting with the Times. The Afghan data breach on the front there, after more than 100 British Special Forces, MI6 spies and military officials were named in that leak. The Metro leads with the government announcing plans to give the vote to 16 and 17-year-olds at the next election. The paper calls those youngsters Starmer's new Generation X. Though Labour might hope to benefit from the move, the Eye suggests that Reform UK and Jeremy Corbyn's apparent new party could actually have the most to gain. However, the Telegraph suggests the threat of reform is exactly why the Prime Minister has introduced the new rule. But The Guardian moves focus onto Diane Abbott and the news that she's been suspended from the party for a second time. The Financial Times reports that the UK recorded 41,000 job losses in June, the fifth month in a row where unemployment increased overall. Meanwhile, the Daily Mail writes of plans to use facial recognition cameras at this year's Notting Hill Carnival to try to crack down on violence. The Sun leads with more details on the sacking of MasterChef star John Turode over allegations of racism. So let's talk to Tim and Rachel. And Tim, you want to kick off on the Afghan data breach and the new revelations today, but with a bit of a lament, in fact. Do explain.
Well, I don't want to put words into Rachel's mouth, but I think rarely we are in complete agreement on this one. I think this is a massive, massive story. It's about immigration, it's about our security, it's about the competence of government. And today, we have learned that it's about the security of those people who keep us safe, our security services. The Times has led on it. I think the FT has a front page on it. But sometimes the newspapers, I feel, don't actually cover the most important stuff. And I don't want to sound like a mother saying, you've got to have your Greens nation. But this is an important story that says an awful lot about the power and ability of our state to do what we expect it to do. The whole way it's been covered in secrecy as well is definitely a legitimate debating point and something that I think the press should be more interested in and invested in.
But it's day 3 and they've done pages inside and there's other things that are important. I'm just saying, I'm defending the newspapers tonight.
And some of the newspapers have done a very good job, as you say, inside. But overall, though, I think this is one of the stories that will define the period in British government when the two mainstream parties, the establishment parties, seem to lose grip of Whitehall, the delivery of government and the confidence of the country. It sort of embodies what Reform and Jeremy Corbyn's new sort of left-wing insurgent party are trying to fight against.
Yes, there's the FT coverage that you mentioned, Tim. MI6 operatives, UK Special Forces named in the leaked Afghan database. Rachel, do you concur?
Yeah, did I say too much on
your
behalf?
No,
I agree. I think this is a huge story. So Lewis Goodall, the journalist who wrote the story and has done an excellent job of discussing the ins and outs of this story. One of the many things that is extraordinary about this is, obviously you just think, well, if the government can place a super injunction, so can't report the story, can't report that you can't report the story, on something like this, what else is it doing?
Absolutely.
And that in itself is terrifying. It's huge. It's such a huge breach of the way our government and our parliamentary system works. So even on that alone, and then you get to the lives of these, as the FT says, as many as 100,000 people in Afghanistan at risk of Taliban reprisals. What are they supposed to think? What are they supposed to do now? I think Sky was interviewing someone the other day who is safe, but who his mother is still in Afghanistan. And just the trauma, re-triggering...
but it was done to protect people. That super injunction was there to protect those people, don't you think?
You do not know
that. That's the explanation that...
That's what the government said.
Do you not think keeping a lid on this getting out did protect people.
We do not know why the government placed that super injunction on.
Well, that's why they said it was.
Or
Yeah,
did they
that's
do
not
it
the
to
same as what
hide?
it was.
Or did
Come
they
on.
do it to hide the incompetence that led to this?
Or did they
issue?
do it
You know,
because they didn't want to have a conversation about asylum just before an election? I don't know why.
And there's one thing to have it to cover the period when the operations were beginning, but they kept this injunction for a long period afterwards, and that does seem to suggest that it was more about protecting their inner workings.
It sounds
than
like it was
necessarily
more
the
to
issue.
protect their inner workings, yeah. And then you've got this
I
whole
think
thing.
it's more to protect those people. I mean,
At the beginning, perhaps.
And neither do I. But we can speculate.
That's the point about democracy. We
can
debate these
speculate.
things.
No, but the other important thing here is that the government, you know, the reason the government is now talking about it, this government, because of course at the time it was the Tories, they're like, oh, we've done a reassessment, we've reassessed, and now they're not at risk. And it's like, okay, so what has significantly changed? How on earth
that the Taliban didn't go after as many people as they thought it might do at the time of this.
But that's not a satisfactory answer. On the one hand, a few years ago,
well, you can only make an assessment, can't you? And that was, you know, an investigation leading to that assessment.
You genuinely don't see a problem with an assessment that goes, this is so severe a risk that we have to slap a super injunction on it, to another assessment a few years later that goes, oh, whoops, sorry, our mistake, there's no risk at all, and by the way, the repatriation scheme is cancelled. You do not see a problem with that, genuinely.
I didn't say that. Over a period of time, you can see that things have, you know, that change happens.
I think it's an extraordinary change, and it just asks more questions than it answers.
And extraordinary incompetence as well, so in the first place.
Incompetence is the most generous appraisal.
Right, let's see what booted it off the front pages, though. Which, no, I am, because what booted it off the front pages, front of the Metro, front of the Telegraph, etc. Voters at 16. Right, I'm going to do a poll. Who supports this move and who does not? Put your hands up for supporting it.
Oh.
Back to disagreement.
Okay, back to our normal state.
Why is this a good idea, then?
Because, look, I think 16 and 17-year-olds are an active part of society and are getting affected by all of these policies, all the decisions that are made in Parliament and by the government. And also, I just think young people are incredibly aware of the world. 16 and 17-year-olds, there's a really high on anxiety levels. Kids are not OK around the climate emergency, around things like this genocidal war that we're seeing in Gaza, which, by the way, is also not on the front pages, even though it's been going on for 20 months and should be. Young people are worried about their employment, their capacity to ever be able to afford somewhere to live, start a family, all those things. And they absolutely should have a say in those things that will affect their lives.
OK, Tim.
I think this has been introduced...
Lead for the Telegraph as well. And their argument is, votes at 16 as Starmer panics over reform. Is that a fair assessment, first of all? And then you give your view.
I think this has been a long-standing Labour commitment. I don't think it's particularly about panic about reform. It was first introduced, I think, in the UK and Scotland because Alex Salmond thought it would help him with the referendum. He thought younger people, correctly, were more in favour of independence. And I think Labour wanted to introduce this because they thought younger people wanted Labour. But I think younger people, you know, change in response to how politics changes. Younger people are generally more radical. And I think the idea that Starmer will be seen as Mr Radical at the next general election by 16 to 17, I think it's much more likely to be Nigel Farage or Jeremy Corbyn that they will vote for. So I think it's probably motivated by political reasons. But like Labour generally, they're not always the most competent of parties, and I think this policy may backfire on them.
And the idea it'll generate, what, possibly 9.5 million extra voters. And the point is that young people, even at 18, aren't very ready to come to the polls, and this will encourage people to get into the habit of voting. Do you accept that as an argument? Because from my point of view, I just wasn't ready to even think about voting at 16 to 17. And, you know...
But you would imagine like the choice.
No, I wouldn't. No, I wouldn't. I mean, you know, I can see arguments for it, and I understand some of the issues that you mentioned, but I just don't know how many are really ready to make, you know, fair decisions and proper decisions. I mean, I don't know the answer to that.
I don't know the answer either, but I think that there's two separate things here, isn't there? There's people having the right to have a say in their future, which we may or may not agree with, and I do. And then there's a separate thing of why aren't people voting? And, you know, it's not an argument to not give people the vote. It's an argument to give people something to vote for. And I think that's the problem with our current system. People look at Labour and the Conservatives and think, well, you're both the same. I don't know what the difference is, and so I'm not going to bother coming to the polls.
Well, I agree on that as well. You've got to choose an age somewhere, and inevitably it's arbitrary. The thing I worry particularly about votes at 16 is it means that politics could become part of school life. And I heard a radio thing earlier where people were saying perhaps it should be introduced into the curriculum somehow for children, therefore, to be educated about how to vote. And I don't really like the idea of teachers getting involved in politics.
But they could be taught about the dangers of autocracy. And how what a privilege it is to have a democracy to be able to vote.
You look at whatever the teachers' union is now called, the leader of it, is endlessly political. And unfortunately, a large part of the teacher movement now is very political. And so I'd rather keep politics out of school, and I think this will encourage that.
Politics is already in school.
Well, politics is already in school.
Politics in my school, age 16.
That's my point, and I don't think it's a healthy
from
and
the
balanced...
Kids, from the kids, not from the teachers. Well, talking about.
I've been into school quite a lot to speak to A-level students, and they say, the teacher said to me, they're not remotely engaged in politics, but they are engaged in the Palestinian issue because they see dead babies on TikTok. And so, you know... age 16 with Reform and Corbyn, as you said, likely to benefit. The Green Party possibly as well, certainly.